Hi, I'm Benjamin Sears. Welcome to Movement Snacks. If you're enjoying these short practices, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. As promised earlier this week on Instagram, today's practice will focus on some spinal coordination movements. In other words, we'll be doing transverse spinal waves, and then we'll move into some very specific spinal mobility work. So what will this practice do for you? It'll give you more awareness of your spine. It'll help you open up range in certain areas in your spine sustainably and safely. And I think it'll make you feel pretty good afterwards. So this is a practice that could be a primer for another practice that you want to do, or it could just be simply a standalone feel good in your back kind of practice. So in my Instagram primer earlier this week, I talked about the glide of the rib cage to translate into eventually a transverse spinal wave. In this practice, we're going to start at the top with the upper layer, the head and the neck. So this is something that I highly recommend that after you go through this video that you practice this in the mirror, because the reality is often quite different than how it feels that you're doing it initially, which definitely was my experience when I was taught these movements. It took me quite a while to be able to clean them up, and I've worked with these movements consistently probably over the last 7 years because they're just something that you can do anytime. They're not super demanding outside of your concentration, and they're never painful, and they're great as a movement snack or just a small break. So the movement of the head in the transverse wave looks like this. So I'm really trying hard not to tilt or turn my head as I do that. And that's normal. It's normal for that to be quite challenging in the beginning. So please don't get discouraged. Just know that in any practice, you have to go through a little, sometimes acidity and frustration to get to the sweetness, which is the freedom of movement that the practice gives you. So the way that you can learn how to glide your neck without compensation from turning or tilting is to give yourself a good target. So the way that we're going to do that is to place your index finger on your upper cheekbone and your thumb on your jawline. And then pull your hands only far enough away, and you might need the mirror to check on this, that you can glide your head into your fingers, touching both at the same time without compensation. So in other words, if you start to go like this, right, then you know that you just have to make the target small enough so that the target is achievable. And you want to be successful and then slowly open up range of motion over, maybe weeks or months if you continue this practice. So we'll start here like this. Keep your eyes straight ahead. Glide your chin to the left and hold. Glide back to the right and hold. Glide back to the left and hold. And I know this is like very nuanced and it's not like super fitnessy or sweaty or like a calorie burning kind of thing, but back to the right and hold. I think that it's just as valuable to truly be able to embody and understand yourself and control yourself. Glide back to the left and hold. As you hold, try to move a little bit more in that direction, as it is just to be able to suffer in a workout. So go back to the right and hold. We're going to do 10 in each direction. That's 6 to the left and hold. 6 to the right and hold. 7 to the left and hold. Good, and each time try to make it a little bit cleaner and pause, and as you pause, push into your fingers, and you'll feel that the soft tissue that moves your neck is going to have to work in order to do this. So these isolated movements are a great way to empower the tissues that move your bones to move well. As you continue this practice, maybe on your own, if you're inspired, make sure that when you hit these corners, you hold for a moment. Okay, so that was about 10. Now we're going to glide forward and back, which will probably be a lot easier because these are more common head positions. So that simply looks like this. Glide forward without, again, try not to lift or tilt your chin up or down, and then glide back. Another thing as we're doing this is keep the rest of your body like completely still. And just glide your chin forward and back. Feel for reaching forward as much from the forehead as from the chin. Pause for a beat in the back position. Pause for a beat in the front position. What's interesting to me about pausing in the back position is I feel pull, like tension across my upper chest and arms, which indicates that those areas affect the posture of my head, which will affect the posture of my entire body. So as I continue to explain some of the background around these movements, remember to pause in each position for at least 2 beats. Pause at the back, hold. Pause at the front, hold. Pause at the back, hold, and rest. Your mind might be exploding, and I just want to tell you and put you at ease that that is a very common reaction to this kind of movement. Sometimes we get so good at doing things that appear intense that we like to avoid the intensity of a real deeper concentration and focus, and that's what this kind of work requires. So it's an important skill to train, and also the ability to sort of transcend the challenge when the challenge isn't just about pushing harder. So we're going to now hit each corner in a circle to the right in a clockwise direction. So hit the front corner, pause. Hit, this would be on my right, this would be 3 o'clock. 6 o'clock, pause. 9 o'clock. So this is my own clock, right? Looking forward at the clock, or really looking down at the clock. 12 in front of me. 3, hold. 6, 9. Allow yourself to pause in each position. And again, this is a pretty short practice, and longer duration work and consistent work with this kind of stuff, I have seen in some students really clean up some neck and spine issues. You just have to be willing to spend the time on it. Again, you can use this kind of practice, pause in each corner, as a prep for other practices, or it can be a standalone, just a nice way to get some lubrication into your joints. Pause at the right, pause at the back, pause at the left, pause at the front. Nice, and now let's just try for a few moments to make a fluid circle of the neck. One good key is to keep your eyes on one still point. The rest of my body is relatively relaxed, but not so soft that it's just able to move in any which way. I'm really trying not to move my shoulders or my hips at all. Let's continue to circle this way. So when I was learning these movements, I would typically spend about 5 minutes going each direction at each level of the weight. That might sound like a lot to you, but the dosage really promotes the cure. Pause in the front, and then let's go counterclockwise. So left, back, right, and then let's do a few of these slowly actually. So just hold in the front, pull to the left, to the back, to the right, front, left, back, right. I get this really interesting stretch on the left side of my neck and chest when I go to the right, and same thing on the right when I go to the left. Pause in the front, hold in the left, pause at the back, pause at the right, pause at the front, and now let's try to make slow circles. Avoid the temptation to allow speed to affect quality. So keep these movements smooth and go at a pace that's slow enough that again you can maintain some quality. So speed really is earned through development of the specificity. And these movements actually give you a lot of freedom over time, even though initially they can feel a bit like a grinding of the gears both mentally and physically. Continue going to the left. Stay focused. So there's something from a meditation perspective called an adhitthana, which is like a vow. You know, it's like in meditation you could take an adhitthana not to move when you start your meditation. And in this practice, you could take a simple vow to set a timer and just continue to work for that amount of time. Pause at the back, just rest, soften your knees for a moment. We're going to work now into the middle layer. The bottom layer is the hips, which is the easiest part, so we're saving it for last. So the transverse spinal wave of the middle spine looks like this. And the front and back will probably be quite easy relative to the side to side, so let's start with that. So put a finger in the center of your chest and then just push into the finger. And as you push into the finger, keep your hips underneath you. So in other words, what we don't want is this kind of thing, right? So you can do a little bit of like activation of your lower belly and bring your tailbone just slightly down, not like in an aggressive way, but just enough to keep maintain some relative stillness and quiet in the rest of the body. So push into the finger, your finger, and then now use your finger to push you back into a round shape. So spinal flexion, like rounding the spine, is something that I think is an under-addressed skill that's quite important for spinal health. And then push forward into your finger. Try to go straight forward and straight back, not so much up and down. And then you'll feel this nice stretch at the back, so you can pause here and then take an inhale into your back. Exhale. Try to round a little more. Again, notice I'm not dropping my head, so I'm really trying to isolate this part. And it's not about shoulders moving forward and back, right? I just take my chest forward and back. Heart forward and heart back. So the metaphor here is it's good to know when to open and when to close, and kind of develop superpowers that way. Pause in each position of just knowing what the moment requires of you in order to be able to stay in your center and get what you want. Pause in each position. You can add your breath to it if it helps you to inhale going one way and exhale going the other way. And I'm going to be intentionally vague about that because I want you to figure out for yourself which way works better for you. You can pause and take a whole breath cycle and bring awareness into your back as you inhale into your back. Feels quite nice, actually. Come forward, take a full breath cycle there. Place your hands on your ribs. So this one is about lateral glide, and then we'll connect all the corners like we did in the head. So glide your ribs into your right hand and hold. And glide your ribs into your left hand and hold. This is probably the hardest one for most people. The spinal flexion one, where you round backwards, it feels easier, but then the reality is that a lot of us don't have as much range in that direction as we might think. Glide to the right. And the reason that spinal flexion is so important is that if you have active range in spinal flexion or rounding your back, then everyday tasks like picking stuff up where you don't just get to bend forward in a perfect fold become a lot safer. Glide to the right, hold, glide to the left, hold, glide to the right, hold. Again, try to avoid your ribs coming forward or twisting, and isolate the lateral glide in each direction. To the left and hold. To the right and hold. If I want to control my pelvis a little bit more, I grip with my toes and lift my perineum, press my hips a little bit forward. Back to the right and hold. So you can continue gliding side to side and holding while I sort of fill in between the lines with some colorful details and extrapolations on these ideas. Glide back to the right and hold. Glide back to the left and hold. And then soften, relax for a moment. So let's try to put it all together into a clockwise circle in the middle of your spine, your thoracic spine. So we start, I think a nice technique here too is like, you can keep your hands on your rib cage and feel what you're doing. You can also put your hands on your thighs to help keep your shoulders quiet. So you can try either one of those techniques and see what works for you. I'm going to start with my hands on my rib cage. So forward, right. We'll just do short pauses to start. To the back position, to the left, forward, right, left, all the way, forward. Kind of mixed up left and back there, right. faster, right, back. It's never a rush though, left, forward. This is really a beautiful opportunity as you make it a little bit more fluid to connect with yourself and to not rush. You know, so much of life, in order to get where you're going, sometimes you got to put a rush in it. And the beauty of practice is that it can reveal that really the way to get wherever it is that you're going to get through practice is not to rush. And the beauty of that is it affords a type of presence that we often can't afford in life, because there are needs, like you have to succeed and get there on time and produce. And here, you can bring your hands now down to your legs. Really, we're not trying to succeed. We're trying to understand and gain insight. And that is success in practice. So the insight might be that this coordinated spinal work is actually quite challenging for you, but then that's great information to have, because there's no rush. You're not trying to fix yourself, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with you, right? It's just some areas of each of us are more well developed than other areas. Pause, and let's put hands on ribs again and change directions. Now going counterclockwise, right? So like, I've practiced this a lot, so I've gotten better at it. But if I, you know, showed up at your job and tried to do your job on the first day, it would probably be pretty ridiculous. Take some time to develop aptitude. And I think sometimes in life today, people just expect that it's supposed to happen right away. And if it doesn't, then it feels like drudgery. But really, within that work, you can bring your hands down. Within that work, within that, you know, what is sometimes perceived as the boring details of the practice, the, you know, days alone in front of the mirror trying to figure out something like this out, that's really where the richness of the practice comes in, because that's where you find grist for the meal of progress. Let's see if we can speed it up just a little bit. So as you do this work, be conscious of touching every corner. Still going to the left. And again, this is a relatively short practice with more explanation. Let's pause. When you do this on your own, like I said, I would say a minimum of 3 minutes. You could do this daily, each direction for the head, 3 minutes each direction for the torso. Up to as much as 5 minutes would be great. And then we'll go to the hips, and this is going to be the easiest part for pretty much everybody. So the hips is just about not moving anything else, but basically it's just a circle of the hips like this. My legs pretty straight, and I'm not trying to like pop my hip out to the side, but just touch every corner with your pelvis. So I imagine that for most of you that this one almost instantly feels easier. And the reason for that is just that this is a range of motion that you use more often than the other ranges of motion. But remember that, again, practice is about gaining insight into your blind spots, because blind spots are not just physical, they're metaphorical. And when you uncover a physical blind spot, it's like realizing that there's a room that you haven't been going into in the house of your body. And you can jump the metaphor and notice how you react, pause and change directions to the experience of going into that room, which can be initially a little bit dark and scary, and your reaction to that experience can reveal another psychological blind spot, right? In life, when you bump into other people metaphorically, like when, you know, someone says something, you get into a little thing or something like that, really it's always that you were each in each other's blind spot. Let's speed this one up a little bit. It's like walking down the street and, you know, two people looking on their phones and they bump into each other and they're both like, hey, what are you doing? And really the reality is they were both each person was in the other one's blind spot. There's such an interesting psychology behind it. Okay, let's pause. As you can see, that one was pretty easy. So now we're gonna amp this up a little bit, because I want to give you all these options within this practice so that you can continue to work with this these concepts on your own. So we're going to connect all of the circles. So there are connection points in the circles. So when I connect my head to my torso, I connect at the back of the wave, right? If I connect my torso to my head, again, I connect at the back of the wave. So it's good to pause when you learn the connections. When I connect my torso to my hips, I also connect at the back of the wave. Now the interesting part is that when I connect my hips to my torso, my hips go to one side, my torso goes to the other, and then I connect the wave and continue. So at the back, torso to hips, and then hips are to the right, but I wait till my hips go to the right, and then my torso comes to the left in order to connect. So let's start by practicing the head to torso wave. So let's go counterclockwise in the head, slowly. And on the third wave, switch to the torso for 1, 2, and then on the third one, back up to the head for 1, 2, 3 is when we change it. 2, 3, 1, 2. At the back of this third wave, we switch to the torso. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, back to the head, to the torso, hit every corner. You don't have to rush. You can almost pause for a moment as you transition. And now let's change directions. So we'll go clockwise with the head to the back. And then on the third one, chin goes back. And torso, 2. And 3, we switch. 1, 2. Connect at the back of the wave. 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Last one. Okay, let's keep going clockwise in the torso. 1, 2, 3 into the hips for 1, 2, and now when my hips go over here, that's when my torso goes to the right and I connect for 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then on the left side, torso goes to the right for 1, 2, at the back, 3, notice my torso stops moving, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, last one, 3, and we go last Nice, and then pause at the back and change directions with your hips for 1, 2, and then on the right side, that's when we switch. So when the movement is counterclockwise, the hips will transition to the torso at 3 o'clock, right there. Go on the third one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Over on the right there, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's the third circle is almost like a half of a circle. 1, 2. Last one. There we go. Okay, now we're going to keep going in this direction, and we're going to briefly attempt to transition after just one circle in each direction. So hips to the torso, at the back to the head, at the back to the torso, at the back to the hips, on the right to the torso, at the back to the head, at the back to the torso, to the hips, at 3 o'clock to the torso, to the head, to the torso, to the hips. I mean, you could spend easily 5 minutes just on these transitions. The nice thing about this is, like, you might feel it a little bit, you know, that you did a lot of these rotations, but they're so restorative in a way and low intensity that this is something you could do every day without needing any kind of recovery. And this is just like, these have become such a really significant part of my just mental health practice. Like, I'll do these circles as breaks from, you know, computer work, or do this stuff at the airport. Okay, pause at the back and change directions. So we're just doing one circle in each direction. Now that we're circling clockwise, remember that the hips will transition at 9 o'clock right here. So 9 o'clock, hips to torso. And then also it's, this is really infinite because there are all sorts of waves that you can learn, and you can start to connect the waves, and then it really becomes improvisational. So first you isolate a movement to learn it well, then you integrate it, in other words, start to make the transitions, and then eventually you have the tools to be able to improvise and just move and enjoy it. Go about 30 more seconds here. Maybe let it get a little looser towards the end here. And as you get more skillful, that sort of, you know, gritty, tense thing that you might experience initially will drop. You'll be able to drop tension from other parts of your body. Okay, let's pause. I think that stuff feels great. So this is where you'll need your block or your foam roller or your bolster or whatever you've got. We're gonna do a twist, one of my favorite twists really, and then we'll do a little bit of lumbar spine decompression to finish out the practice. So position your block or your roller like this so that you can put your right foot on it with your right knee in line with your hip. And this is really one of my favorite twists. So I might use the wall with my fingers to give me a little bit more leverage, but it's totally not necessary. You don't need a wall. So the nice thing about this twist is we're gonna do a twist with internal rotation of the hip. So it really intensifies the decompression you can get in your low back. Now the key for this twist is that your ribs on this side need to pull downwards so that you're not creating a sharp turn at your lumbothoracic junction. So head can go down and this arm is going to push the floor. Now just put your right hand on your rib cage and then take an inhale, and on the inhale avoid flaring your ribs, like lengthen your back without opening your lower ribs. And then on the exhale, just push your hand down into your ribs so you get that feeling of pulling your ribs together like a corset, and that should right away give you a feeling of length in your low back. So also, if you have a lot of internal rotation, like if you're a dancer or something, you might want to put your foot higher. But if the position is too demanding, you can always just lower your foot. Now the key here is that I don't want you to twist to the point that your knee comes up, right? This is sort of, this is a boundary. And then reach your other arm behind you. And with each exhale, pull your ribs down, reach your arms apart. I like to make fists because I feel like it gives me a little bit more power. And then keep a straight reach through your bottom leg. And on every exhale, reach through the shoulder blade of this back side, this right side, and try to pull your shoulder blades together into the twist. Every once in a while, you can exhale through your mouth and imagine that you're blowing air through your belly and out to the sides to close your ribs, just to find that ribs down position. But it's not like a ha, like a moany thing. It's really like a forceful exhale. Like that. 5 more breaths here, reaching your arms apart. Ribs together. Feels so nice at the right side of my lower back, the side of the foot that's higher. 1 more breath, breathe down into your belly. Oh, on that last one, I just adjusted my spine. Let's do the other side. So I get a lot of nice length in my low back from that. Again, this is another drill that you could pull out and use, in your practice anywhere, or it can also just exist on its own when you feel like your back needs it. So lie on your right side and then prop your left foot up and keep your left knee down. So the most common mistake, in this one is that your knee lifts and then it's you're twisting less. So don't worry about how far you can twist backwards towards this, wall or whatever's behind you. Instead, just keep this fixed point, that anchor point. Okay, reach your arms apart. Some of you might need something for your head. If that's, if you're very tight in the upper back, you can pad your head. And then start with your left hand on your left ribs. On the exhale, pull your ribs down, and that should immediately give you a feeling of length in your lower back. Nice. And then bring your arm behind you and keep some push down with your knee and your foot. Remember, a couple of mouth exhales are okay here to generate a little more power, but it's that forceful exhale. I imagine breathing down into my belly on the inhale, and on the exhale, I exhale through my navel and out to the sides, pulling my ribs down. That's where I imagine the breath going. One side, will always be a little bit more challenging. And be patient with yourself. Allow yourself to really feel into this action of the rib cage, which is the key to this movement. Remember, pull shoulder blades towards each other and down, so you're using the strength of the back of your shoulder to help pull you into the twist. 1 more exhale. Let's do one last one just for a little extra love. Great. Okay, so from there, you can just roll over and grab a hold of whatever your block or bolster setup was. So I'm going to put my feet up on the wall in line with my knees like this. You could do this on a couch or on a chair. The ideal would be to have you be able to put your feet flat against something so you can pull downwards a little bit, but you could also have your heels on top of a chair and then put the block or whatever you've got in between your knees. So we're just going to take about a minute of lumbar decompression using that lateral breath that I explained in the twist. So the way that it works again is like gently squeeze the object and pull downwards with your feet, but not so much that you lift your hips. Just pull down with your feet to kind of assist your pelvis into a tucked position. Put your hands on your rib cage and then practice this breathing technique called lateral breathing. So inhale and expand the size of your abdomen outwards and hollow your belly, but without letting your ribs thrust up and out. So really you're trying to use the inhale to push your low back down, but it's not like an Uddiyana Bandha in yoga where you hollow out and your ribs go up and out. So keep your hands on your low ribs. Inhale, hollow your belly, squeeze and pull your feet downwards. And then on the exhale, go through your belly and try to press more of your low back onto the floor. So we're really just using the strength of the abdomen and the breath and this assist of the squeeze inwards with the inner thighs to lengthen your lower back. So with every exhale, try to get longer in your lower back, more rounded. And then on the inhale, don't lose the position. So this is a great technique to learn, like for example, for breathing in something like a plank or a handstand, where you're trying to decompress your back and keep it long, but you have to figure out how not to lose it on the inhale. So when you're ready, switch from these mouth exhales to nose exhales. You can bring your arms out to the side. Inhale into your navel, out to the sides. Exhale, pull ribs down, and imagine your exhale going out through the sides of your abdomen. Lift your chin just a little. Amp up the squeeze on the block and the pull down with your feet for the last 3 breaths. Try to crush the floor with your lower back. I get a little shaky as I really lengthen my inhales. Oh, but it feels so good in the back. One more. Nice. So from there, you have a couple of options. You could just slide your butt up to the wall and stick your legs up the wall, which I think will just feel really nice. It's more of a softer practice today, which can be great. And you know, the thing I love about having techniques, you know, different options in your practice is that you have techniques to suit the moment. And then in your practice, you find a balance between, you know, like staying on course and doing what you want to work on and maintaining consistency. But if you're consistent enough, then often what you need is a break. And then also these pieces can be utilized in different ways. Like the last drill we did, all these drills could be preparation, they could also be wind down. So wherever you are, if you've got your legs up the wall, or if you're just lying flat on your back, or you maybe have your feet on a chair, any of those things are fine. Breathe down into your pelvis again, and then simply just let everything relax at its own pace. And it might not happen in one breath. In fact, it rarely does. You know, what's more interesting than trying to force yourself to relax quickly or judging yourself for it is just to really get interested in your own rate of release. Kind of like, oh, that's interesting. That was my left hip letting go. Or, oh, my left shoulder is still holding on. And then you don't even have to like push it to relax. Just keep your awareness there and see what happens. Literally holding space for yourself without judgment. Like the real compassion, which is often just holding holding space, not trying to fix someone or something. Because ultimately we all have to kind of figure it out for ourselves. You can swallow. Feel how that opens your airway. Feel the tingling in your skin. Soften your knees. Let go just a little bit more somewhere in your upper body that you want to. And let go just a little more in your face. Just imagine, just for this moment, that everything is moving perfectly, exactly as it is. So if you're comfortable and enjoying this rest, just stay where you are. Or you can roll over to one side and pick yourself up. Come to sit. And I hope you enjoyed the practice, and I encourage you to dive into that spinal work and make time for it, as challenging or sort of confrontational as it might be. And it might even seem useless, like, why do I need to do this? Does it make me better at anything? It makes you better at you. And also, taking care of your spine doesn't just mean like going forwards and backwards and pushing it as hard as you can, but it means bringing blood and nutrition to all the intervertebral joints through movement and rotational movements, because that's how they get nourished. And you can really think of this as a longevity practice. Thanks for joining. Peace.